Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Israel, after all of these talks about occupying the Gaza Strip, and despite the fact that the talks about this occupation of the Gaza Strip, especially Gaza City, or at least control, they're now doing a huge U-turn with reigniting the talks with the Palestinian delegation and the mediators, both in Doha and in Egypt. What is Benjamin Netanyahu doing exactly? Is this another part of his stunt? Or is Benjamin Netanyahu confirming that Israel is incapable of occupying all of the Gaza Strip, despite this muscle flexing and arrogance coming from Benjamin Netanyahu? A lot of things happen in the background, especially with more actions being taken by the Israeli defense minister against the chief of staff. How is that connected to the operation, alongside the fact that the Israeli army is incapable technically of having this occupation in Gaza? I'm going to talk to you all about these things alongside more publications coming from the Palestinian resistance and the recent two statements that Benjamin Netanyahu had. One of them included an address to the Iranian people again. The last time Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the Iranian people was on the 13th of June, when Israel began an operation against Iran. Is Benjamin Netanyahu preparing for another campaign against Iran? Because all of this fake accomplishment faded away? Are we expected to see something even bigger than before? I'm going to talk to you all about this in this live stream, and hopefully, if I have time towards the end, I will hopefully have some time for Q&A. And I missed being with you guys in this live stream. Actually, I haven't done a live stream in about 5 days, only video. So it's good to be with all of you, and welcome again to another live stream. So here we go. Israel is considering sending a delegation to talks in Qatar. Sources familiar with the matter said that if a delegation does not indeed leave to resume talks, it will discuss a comprehensive deal in exchange for ending the war. At the same time, the Hamas delegation in Egypt is holding talks with senior Egyptian intelligence officials, and Envoy Witkoff met with the Qatari Prime Minister this weekend to formulate a comprehensive deal. All parties involved want to resume negotiations and prevent the occupation of Gaza City. The Egyptian foreign minister is saying, we are investing a great effort. Now, hold on a second. Let's have a little bit of a background, right? Let's not rush into things. Israel said they're not going to resume talks. They withdrew from the talks alongside Steve Witkoff, didn't they? They said we're not going to resume talks unless Hamas come and accept the Israeli proposals. What happened? Hamas told them, I'm not going to go into the talks unless you allow aid in, and lift this starvation campaign. Aid is going in, but in a limited quantity. From Hamas perspective, they can translate that into something is getting in. Therefore, if there are talks, we can potentially go ahead. More reports about like 70 to 80 trucks going in a day, increasing the numbers. Again, nowhere near enough, but as in, something. Israel is clearly having a U-turn. Benjamin Netanyahu, why is he having a U-turn? And what's going to happen with all of this Gaza occupation and Gaza City campaign? We'll get to the Gaza City campaign and what they suffered in recent days. That has been declared by the Palestinian resistance, shocking numbers of losses of Israeli machinery. We'll get to that later on in this live stream. Israel is having this U-turn. The fact that they are entertaining the idea of going back into the negotiations is a clear indication that this move, like the Israeli finance minister Bezalel Smotrich stated, was a step before they go into a ceasefire. Meaning Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't really interested in actually occupying the Gaza Strip, and he was trying to use this move as leverage against the Palestinian side, in coordination, of course, with the United States administration so that Hamas can take a step back and the Palestinian side can take a step back, and the mediators will get anxious and say, oh, no, 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 let's prevent this occupation. Let's get to a deal. From Netanyahu's perspective, if he would go ahead without an occupation, now that's of course not to say that the concept of Israel invading Gaza or having a big campaign is ruled out, no. But what that means is it's not at the scale that Benjamin Netanyahu portrays it at. However, if Netanyahu does not go with this occupation, he can come and tell the Israeli public and the people, look, when I threatened to go and occupy Gaza, they came back to the negotiating table and started to beg me and told me I will disarm and I will do this and I will do that. However, will there be a disarmament? Will the Palestinian side adhere to the Israeli demands? Let's hear what the Egyptian foreign minister had to say, because the Egyptian foreign minister is the one leading, or one of the leaders of the ceasefire talks and the leaders of the negotiations. Israel is being dead serious now. The Palestinian side has to disarm, and we need to kick them out outside of the Gaza Strip. As a matter of fact, some propagandist media is publishing information that the Palestinian resistance, that's it, they're going to disarm and they're going to also relieve Gaza, you know. After all of this, they're going to just leave and raise the white flag. Okay? No substance whatsoever. Total Israeli propaganda. But what are the Egyptian mediators saying? Badr Abdel Ati, who was the Egyptian foreign minister, he said that creating a political horizon for the establishment of a Palestinian state is what will ensure the achievement of unity and the concentration of weapons in the hands of the state. What do we understand from this sentence? We understand that the Palestinian resistance is open to the concept of not being an armed group so long as they have a liberated state. That's nothing new. This is no news, which means they are outright rejecting to disarm in the current formula as requested by Israel after a genocide, and as a demand, as a prerequisite from Israel to go into a ceasefire deal that will declare the ending of the war, an all-out deal. Now, one very important point in all of this, in all of these talks that are happening now, is the fact that everyone now is concluding that we are talking about a declaration of the ending of the war. Benjamin Netanyahu himself, the Israeli side as well, the American side, and the Palestinian side, they declared that from a very long time ago. They said, we're willing to give you back all of the prisoners of war and have a deal and stop the military operation. One day after, Al-Aqsa flood battle started. A campaign which began because there was no side to talk to. Israel wasn't even responding to anything in relation to the Palestinian hostages. Hundreds under administrative detention and thousands without proper due diligence, wrongfully being imprisoned and kidnapped and executed by Israel. They wanted to address that problem, and of course Israel wasn't listening to any of that. Which means Netanyahu is serious about having an all-out deal. Netanyahu himself, when he declared the option to go and occupy Gaza City and have this large campaign in Gaza, confirmed that if the Palestinian side come back and adhere to our demands, we'll go back to the negotiations. Well, they didn't, and you did go back to the negotiations. In addition to that, his key ally, the man who was closest to Benjamin Netanyahu, Ron Dermer, he said the same thing. And the extreme elements in Netanyahu's government saw all through it. They saw through Netanyahu. They knew that he was lying. That's why Smotrich did not support him, and that's why Itamar Ben-Gvir had doubts and also vocal criticism. Let alone the fact that the Israeli army is totally defeated and exhausted. But there are a few interesting things in relation to these ceasefire talks and the potential moving forward. Of course, there's going to be something called a technocratic government made out of 15 independent Palestinian figures to rule through a transition period, according to Egyptian sources, overseen by the Palestinian Authority, without confirming what will be the shape of that Palestinian Authority, because there is a Palestinian Authority in Gaza and there's a Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. But another very interesting move is the fact that Israel is now confirming that Turkey will be involved and has actually been involved in the negotiations for over 6 months now. How Turkey entered the negotiations for the return of the hostages. In this article, they're mentioning that Turkey has been in the picture for 6 months. What is Turkey doing there exactly, and what are they going to change? Of course, from an Israeli perspective, they're calling Turkey the bad guy. You know, the Egyptians don't really, or the Egyptian authorities, they don't really trust them. Israel is suspicious about them. You know, some other countries, they don't like Turkey very much. On the other hand, they have a really good relationship with Hamas in particular and with other elements in the Palestinian resistance. But they also are a member of NATO, and they have really good ties with the United States administration. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump made some moves with the Turkish leadership that really annoyed Benjamin Netanyahu. What are they doing and why are they in? Well, they're in for multiple reasons. Number one, remember when Hamas asked for Turkey to be part of the countries, or one of the countries that will become guarantors of the agreement? When you are a guarantor of the agreement, you will be in a position where you can enforce that agreement. And chances are you would be able to have some sort of enforcement by force too. How do we understand that? Well, Netanyahu confirmed it. What did Netanyahu say? Netanyahu said in his recent statement, when he highlighted the 5 principles of the occupation of the Gaza Strip, that Hamas are looking to get Israel into an agreement that will tie Israel's hands internationally from attacking Gaza again. That's the first evidence. The second evidence, the fact that Israel hasn't gone ahead with a ceasefire up until now, and then resumed the war. Isn't that what many people say? Or people who support Israel will get them out and then go strike Gaza again. What's the problem? Clearly their hands will be tied. But Israel's hands being tied outside of occupied Palestine is not greater than Israel's hands tied within occupied Palestine, and in particular within the Zionist establishment. And that is the biggest problem. If Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli terror army had the capacity to go and occupy Gaza and eliminate the resistance and achieve everything that they wanted, they would have done that with the blessing of the United States administration, with the blessing of many Western countries, and probably with the blessing of some Arab and Muslim countries too. Less than the Western countries who support Israel, though, of course, but clearly some of them would be happy. The problem that he has is that now he is in a huge trouble and in a huge crisis with his IDF Chief of Staff. In one of my previous videos recently, I spoke about the conflict that happened between the IDF Chief of Staff and the Defense Minister. And I spoke to you about a meeting that the IDF Chief of Staff was asking the Defense Minister to have in relation to certain promotions and certain positions, certain upgrades within the Israeli army. They wanted to bring in new people in new leadership positions. No. The defense minister was telling him, shrugging him off, I don't want to see you. Up until he agreed to see him. He agreed to see him. And then what happens? The IDF Chief of Staff comes to the office of the Israeli defense minister, and what does the defense minister do? He doesn't allow him in. It's not him personally who didn't allow him in, by the way. His secretary. Zamir, the IDF Chief of Staff, and the defense minister is one on the other side of Netanyahu. The head of the Israeli army is coming for a prearranged meeting with the Israeli defense minister, who's supposed to be one level above him, for a pre-scheduled meeting. And the defense minister tells his secretary, don't allow him in? Look at that chaos. Look at the level of chaos. A pariah entity, I'm telling you. If there were like banana republics, Israel is a rotten avocado republic, whatever you want to call it. Or a rotten tomato, or tomato, if you're in Britain. Total mess. He doesn't allow him in. What is the excuse from the IDF, from the Israeli defense minister? He says, I told him don't come. I told him before don't come. But he came. Liar. Liar, he's lying. He wouldn't have come, the IDF Chief of Staff. He came after the Israeli defense minister told him, yeah, sure. Okay, now we'll have the meeting. And that meeting, what is it in relation to? It's in relation to assignments within the Israeli army that is supposed to take on the biggest campaign and have decisions being made tomorrow. Tomorrow they should be sitting down and saying what they want to do in Gaza. Do you see the level of garbage and stupidity and nonsense and propaganda? Do you see the level of mess? Netanyahu saying we want to occupy Gaza. Drafts were sent to 250,000 people. They want to have 6 divisions in. 6 divisions to occupy Gaza City. Firstly, oh my goodness, what is this Gaza City? What have you done, Gaza, to this world? What kind of power do you have, Gaza? The superpower, the United States, and the genocide entity, they can't defeat you. What kind of power do you have? Unbelievable power. And despite that, they can't even get their army to go and invade Gaza City. So the defense minister is refusing to meet the IDF Chief of Staff to talk about who's going to actually run the show, something that they should be agreeing on tomorrow. Is the picture clear? Is the campaign clear now? Nothing. They don't know anything from what they're doing. Everything is exposed. Propaganda. That's Israeli media. The same media that's now speaking about senior commanders in the IDF going through burnout. All of them suffering mentally and physically and psychologically. The army being under attrition, not having the capacity to go into another campaign. Over half of those who are ordered to go and serve refuse orders. Previous IDF chiefs of staff calling to refuse orders. Do you understand the magnitude of this little pariah state, paper tiger state, flexing muscles, pretending like they can do something, when they can't beat the unbeatable Palestinian resistance, let alone try and flex muscles against Iran and other countries too? And it didn't stop there with the IDF Chief of Staff. Now they're bad-mouthing the IDF Chief of Staff. What are they saying? He has his secret beehive. He has a secret elite group that he's consulting behind the back of the Israeli government and without approval and without due diligence. How? He is speaking and getting advice from a number of sources outside of the military system. His assistant briefs journalists contrary to procedures, and separately, the IDF is talking about it. What are they trying to do? They're trying to portray the same IDF Chief of Staff that they were saying when they forced Herzi Halevi to resign previously is the man of the hour. Smotrich, Netanyahu, everyone was hailing and clapping for Zamir, the man for the job. He's going to occupy Gaza. He's going to listen to us. He's not going to challenge anything. Look at the level of chaos and division. You know, Netanyahu always says, together we will stand and together we will win. Divided you stand and divided you will fall too into oblivion without return as well. That's what's going to happen. But can you imagine the level where Israeli media and the Israeli Broadcasting Authority is saying that the IDF Chief of Staff had a secret hive? Imagine you're in a country and you have reports in your national media and national broadcasting authority telling you the IDF chief or your army chief is having a secret group of people that he gets information from. And they're bringing certain names like Gabi Ashkenazi, Israel Ziv, Avi Benyahu, Liran Dan, Matan Dansker. Some of them were previously allied with Netanyahu. One of them was a close aide of Benjamin Netanyahu and left him after they saw the real nature of Netanyahu and how despicable and psychopathic he is. And others are vocal critics of the genocide, like Gabi Ashkenazi, who is a previous IDF Chief of Staff. I'm not saying that these people are humanists, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying there's the good guys. No. I'm saying these people oppose how Netanyahu is running the campaign. That's it. Not necessarily having a problem against genocide or barbarism. Some of them do to an extent. And they spoke about it, like Bogi Alon said there's ethnic cleansing in Gaza. He was the previous IDF Chief of Staff. He was the previous defense minister in Israel. I posted the video of the heads of the Mossad, Shabak, and IDF and Amman previously, a couple of days ago, criticizing the war heavily. And some of them were vocal critics of Netanyahu from the beginning. But what are they trying to do here? They're trying to portray the IDF Chief of Staff as some sort of a treacherous element within the country. A man leading to no good, preparing the ground potentially for Netanyahu and his clan to apply more pressure on him to resign. Basically, we have a traitor here. He's refusing to listen to the orders. And by the way, the only thing that he is doing, and again, that's no praise here, don't get me wrong, is following the protocol and being professional about his role. How? Trying to follow procedures, giving his opinion, voicing his concern, portraying the reality, and giving the political leadership the true image and capability of the Israeli army in comparison to their demands from the Israeli army, so that they don't have any over expectation of what they can or cannot deliver. And we saw the catastrophe in what was called Gideon's chariots or Netanyahu's wheelchair. The biggest attacks of the Palestinian resistance, amateurs were going in, roaming around in APCs with the tops open. A Palestinian resistance fighter comes out of nowhere from under the ground, plants a bomb, kills 7, 8, 9, 10. Time after time after time, exposed completely. So they don't know exactly what they're doing. But then again, how can you order an army to go on this campaign without directly consulting the head of the army? That means there's no campaign. Either there's no campaign or there's no army. One of the two. That's why they're simultaneously talking to you about Israel reconsidering sending a delegation to Cairo and to Doha to restart the talks, because you have to go, because you got a beating. That's why, because you can't defeat the other side, and because you carry out all of this destruction and genocide against civilians as an attempt to apply pressure on your opponents or your enemies there without any success. Plus, now we have more revelations of what the Palestinian resistance was doing to them in the past couple of months. Like Saraya al-Quds, which is the armed wing of the PIJ, they went to monitor a site where Israel withdrew from in the eastern part of Gaza. And they published the following. They announced that 52 occupation vehicles were destroyed. How? Minefields, side bombs, pre-made ambushes from far away. You remember the videos that the Palestinian resistance used to show of explosions coming from a distance? Now they went to the sites. And what did they say? 52 occupation vehicles. And what they mean by occupation vehicles? That means a combination of tanks, APCs, vehicles, transport vehicles, excavators, and other machinery that belongs to the Israeli terror army. And that's only one resistance group in one area of an ambush. And what they've done in the recent campaign, Gideon's chariots. Not only that, the Palestinian resistance is manufacturing weapons made in Palestine 2025, missiles, again, the same group, Al-Quds brigades, showing them launching missiles on 2 areas within the occupied territories. Someone explain that to me. Someone explain. Everything is destroyed, and these people are manufacturing missiles. And don't tell me, oh no, they're small and they're ineffective. They're manufacturing missiles. After Israel said, we want to make sure Gaza doesn't pose a threat again, and we want to make sure they're producing missiles. 10, 15, 20 kilometers. Well, we saw one reaching Tel Aviv just a couple of months back. From Al-Qassam brigades, that was. They have a more advanced technology and methods and reach from this movement. But what does all of that tell us? That this whole campaign is a joke. That's why they're going back to talk, and that's why they're declaring that they want to go back to the negotiations. Problems internally, problems with the IDF, problems with the IDF Chief of Staff, all of these problems. Now, moving on to the following thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Benjamin Netanyahu, psychopathic, awkward individual, absolutely, genocidal. You know the score, I don't need to kind of explain too much. He released this video today. He released this video today, sending a message to the people of Iran. 12th of August. Again, holding a jug of water. By the way, he did the same video, literally a replica of almost the same video 7 years ago.
To the Iranian people, to the brave Iranian people, we know you have water shortage, and our engineers can give you water. And we can help you with water. The only thing you need to do is get rid of your regime.
He's talking about water now and problems that Iran has with water. But Netanyahu, so he's speaking to the Iranian people and pushing them to go and have another revolution against the regime. The tyrant of Tel Aviv, Netanyahu. Why is he saying that? Because he failed miserably. He failed miserably. He was trying to take down the establishment of Iran when they attacked them. That's why they tried to assassinate the president and the head of the Shura Council and the parliament and top security figures, and they did assassinate some figures, and they tried to take down the supreme leader, and they were preparing the little treacherous son of Shah who's going around the world, roaming around, supporting Israel in this genocide. What did they do? The opposite. Iranians who oppose the establishment, all of a sudden, they came together. All of a sudden, they said, you know what? You're not going to protect us. All of a sudden, no. We're with the government in defending Iran, even if we're against them from how they run the country. If we disagree with them, separate story. But when Israel attacks us, we don't want Netanyahu. We'll stand with our government. And guess what? And I'm hearing it directly, as in Iranians who oppose the government spoke to me, myself. We hope that Iran finishes it this time. This is what they were saying. We hope the IRGC and the Iranian army wipe them off, eliminate them. And that wasn't just the Iranians and the Iranian opposition. That was the global population. Iran, please finish the job. I mean, people were celebrating and singing and you know, were on a high in that period. And please continue and don't stop. But why is Benjamin Netanyahu having a statement now? This is the thing that I wanted to get to. Benjamin Netanyahu is having this video now. He had a video on the 13th of June. On the 13th of June, Benjamin Netanyahu was telling the Iranian people, listen, Iranians, we love you and you're brave and we are attacking you and killing you, basically, you know? We were just against the regime. But we want to help you and you're brave and, you know, speaking Persian and what have you. It clearly didn't work, but he did that simultaneously with an attack. Now, what happened now in the past couple of months? The supposed achievements of Netanyahu faded away. All of his propaganda machine failed miserably. All of the attempts to portray this campaign of terror against Iran as a success failed. And he's brazenly talking about the fact that they destroyed their nuclear capabilities and strategic missile capabilities to this day, by the way. But that didn't happen. They still have strategic missiles. They were landing the biggest attacks against Israel up until the final moment. Destroying buildings, literally collapsing buildings in Tel Aviv. And the Iron Foam wasn't doing anything. Nor David's Thing, nor Sparrow, Arrow, Marrow. That didn't do nothing. They destroyed Israel. They destroyed buildings. They destroyed bases. They destroyed strategic places. They destroyed oil rigs. They destroyed the biggest oil refinery factory. They destroyed gas exploration locations off the shores of occupied Palestine. Why is he saying that now? Two things. Number one, he's trying to push the Iranian people to do something. Number two, he's planning something. And he's planning something that could potentially be bigger than before. Not in terms of effectiveness, in terms of theatrics. How? Similar to what he's done in Yemen. Attack a couple of oil fields to cause huge fires. So that the people can see, oh my goodness, look, Israel burns everything and da. That's what he's planning to do. Why? So that when he does come towards a deal, he will have a little bit of a bigger backing with all of the stuff that he says about his accomplishments. Oh, look, you know, look at the fires in Iran. Look at Tehran burning.
We killed the Ayatollah regime.
All that garbage. In hope that what? He will gain a bit more popularity in the polls, because now he still has a strong base, undeniably. He's still the leading political group in terms of mandates if elections were to happen tomorrow, but only with 24. And to have a coalition, to form a government in Israel, needs 61 members. And his allies, or core allies, will not even pass the threshold. Like Bezalel Smotrich, who came from Ukraine not long ago, and now claims that this land is his. And this statement from Netanyahu is not to be underestimated. He can be serious. And the deal isn't over with Iran. He would like to portray Iran as a weaker state now due to the Israel attack. That's not the case, and he knows that. And that's why he's having this message now. Because he failed in Iran. Iran is still capable. Donald Trump gave him a very quick rescue rope with this farce of an attack on Fardo and what have you. Just get out. And Iran told them, if you stop attacking, we'll stop attacking. But they did not declare a ceasefire. It was a unilateral declaration from the Israeli-American side. But that threat is real, and don't be surprised if that threat gets implemented soon, even if it doesn't last for longer than a week or two, but purely for Benjamin Netanyahu. And because he's still enabled, and because he is still in power. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. I'll open the space up for the community for a few Q&A, a few questions for the time that we have left. Dino, Pantilucas, Kime Abuya, and Meggie, and Insurgency, thank you all for your supers, much appreciated. And everyone participating in the chat as well. Insurgency, you said there have been many strikes and assassinations in Iran the past month, and ex-Israel intel heads have been bragging on TV7 saying it's them. We haven't had many reports about them, and mind you, they would be exaggerating what they say. But what we do know is that Iran is capable. Iran is capable, and Iran is strong. And Iran did not let out its full firepower on Israel. That's something very important too. And Kimi said, given on behalf of Free Palestine crew, thank you for your work, Mahmoud Palestine. Thank you so much, brother. And Maggie also said thank you as well. And Dino, thank you again. Let's go to some of your questions in the chat. I'll try and reach as much as possible. Excuse me in advance if I don't reach, of course, all of your questions, but we'll try and get a few. I'll try and go to the beginning of the chat and see if we had something from the beginning, and then go down. But if anyone has anything, if you wouldn't mind, even if you stated it before, repeat it now, so I don't have to go back up too much. And if you wouldn't mind highlighting it with something red, so I can actually see it properly. Okay. TMZBGD, besides Turkey, who are the guarantors for Palestinian side? Can they be trusted, and who are the guarantors who will make sure that Israel complies with a potential ceasefire? Well, this is where things get tricky for us as observers and viewers to understand the ins and outs of the guarantors and their role, the scope of their role, and what length they can go to enforce this guarantee of a ceasefire. But clearly, all we can say is that these guarantees are concerning Israel, are worrying Israel. Why? Because number one, Netanyahu himself confirmed that these guarantees that the Palestinian side is looking for will tie Israel's hands. Secondly, Turkey participating in the talks anyway was a prerequisite from Hamas. Israel and the US did not want Turkey involved. They wanted Egypt and Qatar because of their alignment with the United States and the openness of Israel to them. Might have small hostilities here and there, but the hostilities between Israel and Turkey are different, of a different caliber. And Hamas knows how tied Turkey is with the United States, so they know they will have certain leverage that will prevent Israel if Turkey becomes a guarantor. The ins and outs, though, to what length, those details will not be revealed. They will most likely never be revealed, at least in the coming period. But what's for sure is that these guarantees and these statements are worrying Netanyahu himself. That's why he spoke about them in his recent press conference. Orange and Pomade, what role has the Ukrainian-Russian war in this situation? Well, it doesn't have a direct role on this. It's a separate conflict, but the backers are similar. The backers of, for example, Zelensky are similar to the backers of Israel. Both of them couldn't care less about the people. So even if they tell you, oh, we love Ukraine and we care about the Ukrainian, but they don't care about anyone. All they care about is their money, feeding their war machine, and killing millions as cannon fodder for their militaristic corporate oligarchy, chewing people up and killing them in the name of whatever they want to call it. And by the way, you can see the level of hypocrisy. So long as those powers interested in expanding or allowing this war to continue want it to continue, unfortunately, it will continue. So long as we have another side who doesn't have enough strength. Why? Because the world isn't controlled by morals, principles, or virtue. The world is controlled by power. By power, and if you don't have that power, you're vulnerable. Trump promised many beautiful things, very, very beautiful things, he said, before he came to power. Many of his base in the United States supported him, naively, if I may say, because of his claim to end the wars or to want to end the wars, both in Ukraine and in Palestine too, only for him to come and approve more billions to these barbaric wars that don't benefit the people. When the United States president has the power, he has the power, and he can use his power to achieve peace, but he doesn't. Greed. It's because of greed. Saying that, no war will last forever. There's more pressure from the Ukrainian people to end it. The Russian side showed leniency to end it. As a matter of fact, they already agreed with Zelensky before it began. But Zelensky was persuaded by the then Prime Minister of Britain, Bojo, and Biden, who were benefiting. And they told Zelensky, no, you will defeat Russia and we'll arm you with whatever you want. And we know the level of corruption with the authorities in Ukraine. And of course, who pays the price? The innocent people. The innocent people of Ukraine. Millions. When now, even the talks now between Russia and Ukraine are confirming that certain territories will fall under Russian control. So there will be certain concessions and understandings. So the connection is the backers on both sides. And I hope that clarifies. And Tori, you're saying, will the pre-election still find place if a peace deal? Can a temporary rule decide any form of defense in Gaza. Thank you very much for that. And to clarify, we need to understand what the Palestinians want and the free people who support the rights of the Palestinians want, and what the arrogant powers want. The arrogant powers want to impose their neo-colonialist, racist, supremacist way on other people. They want to tell them who will run you, who will not run you, is the scope of your control. Poor things, you can't control yourselves. You need to have a technocratic government. You know, we need to bring peace forces to control you. You're a mess. You know, you don't know how to, you're all over the place. But a psychopathic, lunatic, genocidal entity butchering infants and children? No. We're just concerned. You know, we're concerned about the level of deaths for the past 2 years. They've been concerned for 2 years. Concerned in arming them. Concerned in spying over Gaza for them. Concerned in sending them 2,000-ton bombs. Concerned and arming them with lethal weapons and giving them money. And concerned. So we're seeing a clash. And the Palestinian side, at least in Gaza, led by the Palestinian resistance, is refusing to submit to that version, but is not refusing to have certain concessions so that a deal can be met and achieved. Like, you have problem with us ruling Gaza directly, or they have the right to rule Gaza. They were democratically elected. Listen to the late President Carter, what he said about those elections. But no problem, we'll have a technocratic government. Not put by you, though. Independent, technocratic, yeah, sure. But we need to also have a vision for the future. And they're still talking about Palestinian state, independent, sovereign with Jerusalem as its capital. The temporary rule cannot decide on any form of defense if we're speaking about the same formula. That is unless a genuine solution that would be still temporary, but that would give the Palestinian side some sovereignty, will indeed take place with solid guarantees. Then we can talk from that moment moving forward. But Israel has been clear about what they want as an authority. They want another puppet like Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank. A man who is controlled by an agent in Israel, who can tell him where to go and where not to go, and we approve and we don't approve, and shut your mouth, or we'll put a bullet in your head if you say that. This is what they want. A little puppet. I mean, a mayor in Israel has way more power than the Palestinian president. You see, this is what they want. But the Palestinian people, they don't want that. They want their rights. At the end of the day, it's about equal human rights. It's not even about a piece of land. It's about living as a human being. And then comes the land, and then comes the flag, and then comes all of that. But first and foremost, about equal human rights. If Israel came and occupied all of Palestine and gave everyone equal rights and was so good to them, we wouldn't have been talking today. If Israel gave the West Bank and Gaza equal rights, who would talk? And, you know, elections and justice and. So that's why this thing will continue. Why? Because Zionism is still there. The Zionist entity, the supremacist, racist, neo-colonialist power is still there, controlling through terror. Inequality, apartheid, genocide, barbarism, terrorism, you name it, they're still there. So even if there is peace with them or a ceasefire agreement with them, the problems will continue because that ideology is still there. Don't the enlightened ones talk to us about the dangers of Nazism and how it can never come back again? Although, you know, all of that history should be reread, you know. All this history in this movie about that period. Well, why is a brutal, fascist, worse than Nazi, racist, arrogant, terrorist entity still allowed to function? Why is their ideology okay? Why are Western presidents and prime ministers go and lick their you-know-what? Why? Questions. That's why we're going to continue to have a problem up until that gets resolved. No equality, no historical equal rights, and all of that is not going to work. You can forget about that, no matter how long it takes. And Faint Signals and Khalid Razak, Rune, Bremo, and Brian NY, thank you very much. Khalid, you said, hope Netanyahu can't really invade Gaza City. What's your latest possibility on how will Satan back down? Miss the start. Shukran, akhi. Shukran, thank you, brother. If you roll back, I spoke intensively about it, but I'll tell you briefly, they're talking about the prospect of going back to negotiations now, despite the fact that the Palestinian side did not really concede or show any visible concessions. And Benjamin Netanyahu will sell it as, well, the Palestinian side came back to me because they were worried about the threat, and he's going to try and package it in a certain way to be sold to the Israeli public, even if it includes a U-turn. Because he's done that before. He's done that with the Israeli public election after election. Whether when it comes to taxation, whether when it comes to defense, whether it comes with everything, he backed down, did U-turns. And he did that in the recent war and genocide, where he said, I wouldn't withdraw from here. He withdrew. I wouldn't allow them to go back. He allowed them to go back. I will never allow aid. He allowed aid. In short, you know, and if you go back to the beginning, I spoke intensively about it too. And Brian and I said, could you please explain why Lebanon does not possess any jet fighters or air defenses? It's because their government is not allowed. In Lebanon, you have two sides, like in Palestine. An American Zionist servant who licks the boots of his American master, and a free individual who is looking for the rights in his land. Both of them come from different colors and different backgrounds, by the way. But that's in short what we have. You have a government that has the audacity to say we need to disarm the resistance when Israel is invading them, when the United States is undermining their whole sovereignty and appointing them, and they're on their paychecks, and the ambassador controls them, tells them what to do. Their only concern is to disarm the only thing standing in front of this occupation. That's called political prostitution. That's what it's called. So we're facing political prostitutes versus human beings who have dignity. Again, from all walks of life. It's not just this movement or that movement, no. And that's the whole campaign. So the people in power and the authorities, although, by the way, it's getting worse now. So it's talking like seriously about disarming the resistance, which is not going to happen, by the way. If they start to try and enforce something and try and lead to like a civil war, you know, God forbid, we don't want that for Lebanon. But there are stupid people who are leading it to that way. Israeli agents, some people in Lebanon were participating with Ariel Sharon at the time in massacring Lebanese and Syrians and Palestinians in Lebanon. And they're still there. They were operatives for Israel. This is what we have here. But clearly some people sold their soul to the devil, and they're going to try and impose that on all of the people. Thinking that, you know, the silence of this movement or that movement might mean that they will concede eventually. It's not going to work. And they, of course, don't have fighter just because they're not allowed to, right? Israel doesn't want them. They're trying to disarm the resistance because they have missiles. Can you imagine them allowing them fighter jet? And if they would probably be totally controlled by the United States and nowhere near the level of fighter jets that Israel would have. Because the United States always makes sure that Israel has the superiority, even when they supply to Egypt. That's why Egypt started to diversify. F-16, this, that. But always Israel has an advantage. Israel has the air-to-air missiles. Israel has the longer distance. Israel. So then people started to get sick of it. And Gullyberg also about Lebanon, what's stopping Lebanon from building more airports? Is it the West? They don't have necessarily a problem in more airports, by the way, but the whole thing about Lebanon, you have a financial situation that has become increasingly worse in recent years, a lot of corruption, a corrupt political system, by the way, that is sectarian and based on sectarianism. You don't have real proper systems inside of Lebanon that you can call either democratic systems or independent systems or systems that would necessarily reflect the true nature of Lebanon and its people, regardless of their background. Or this minister needs to be of that religion, that minister needs all nonsense. So lots of problems there. And of course, it's been ruled and run by puppets for the majority of the time. But now they're trying to take it to the next level by taking the most powerful tool inside of Lebanon. Lucas Meneses, greetings from Peru. Greetings to you and everyone in Peru. Do you really think the US will ever stop supporting Netanyahu and his gang? That's really interesting. If you ask me, I think the United States has a plan for the day after Israel. And it's written there, you know, shelved properly. They're preparing for that day, and they're preparing what type of corruption they're going to do. So even if Israel ends tomorrow, please be careful of the United States as an administration. Why? Because they're a danger to their own people. Of course, they're going to be a danger to the people in the region. But I think they are. I mean, they can. They can. At one point, say that's it. So when they see that the ship has sunk, that's it. They have no other option. But from their perspective, this is the last shot of a neo-colonialist entity planted there, splitting Africa from Asia, splitting the Arab world, splitting the Muslim world, causing havoc and problems, and our barking dog in the region. Let's support them up until they kill themselves. You see? But if they see them collapsing, when they see them, that's it, it's done. Listen, there's an argument that by allowing Israel to continue this far, they're allowing them to kill themselves. There's an argument in Israel, by the way, by some Israelis, that Netanyahu is a secret American agent planted there to destroy Israel. That's why they're allowing him to continue. Because if they really were concerned about Israel, they'd stop him. The international PR, how Israel is viewed, international legitimacy, all of the campaign against how people hate their guts, celebrating attacks on Israel, not sympathizing with anyone in Israel, all of that. So America has a plan, but guess what? The plan after Israel will not be good. That's why we need to be wary, because they've been supporting them all along. Pine Martin, do you think that Netanyahu is talking about, and thank you for super, talking, going back to the negotiations so he can stop the UK and others from recognizing Palestine at the UN? Listen, that could be an option for Benjamin Netanyahu. However, that wouldn't be the deal breaker, because Netanyahu allowed harming things to happen to Israel already. Like he drove Israel to a certain place where they are downgraded by the world's biggest credit rating agencies. That's a huge blow for Israel. His actions led to some of the wealthiest Israeli billionaires and their funds and their hedge funds and their businesses and their capital to get out of Israel after they warned him, by the way. It strengthened the sanctions against Israel. So it's not that he cares if the United Kingdom agrees to like recognize the Palestinians. This is all nonsense talk. Like Keir Starmer talking about recognizing a Palestinian state as if it's the big threat. Shut up. You're a war criminal who legitimized the starvation of the children of Gaza from 2023. Shut up. And you can deny that 1,000 times. A child murdering war criminal. That's Keir Starmer. He is as complicit as Netanyahu. He's a direct participant. The Royal Air Force helps Israel with flights, surveillance flights, espionage over Gaza to help them with the genocide. They still arm them. They still legitimize them. They still don't blame them in committing a genocide. If they want to talk about Gaza, they'll tell you, oh, terrible things happen in Gaza because no aid is going in. Failure of aid going in. Who's causing the failure, you hypocrite bastard? Who's causing the failure? Who's killing the people? You see, so there is no address, right? From his perspective and from other hypocrite perspectives too. So first, they should all shut their mouths. Either you do the right thing or shut up. Either you tell us exactly what's happening or shut your garbage, filthy mouth. You genocide supporting pig. But Netanyahu isn't concerned about him. Netanyahu is only concerned about himself and his likelihood of protecting himself now and in the future. And if that works, good. For him, of course. But I don't think that threat like did anything. Like, oh my God, they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. He doesn't like it. Of course he doesn't like it. Because he denies the existence of the Palestinian people, and recognizing a Palestinian state could be a move that would later on say, well, listen, we recognize them, therefore they are entitled to defend themselves, right? And we need to arm them and whatever it is. And that would worry Israel later on. You're talking about a state that lives on paranoia. Stephen Kelly, are the 500 arrests in London Saturday not illegal under international law? Many of the things that governments do are illegal, but they're not challenged because they are the authority and they do things. And when they make them law, you have to abide by the law because you're a citizen, right? That's why in many cases, when people challenged governments, courts found out where there is an element of independence. Of course, courts found out that governments indeed made illegal moves. However, the arrests in London were arrests against people who had banners supporting a prescribed group. A prescribed group is called Palestine Action. From the law enforcement perspective, they are supporting an illegal entity, so they must be arrested. And by the way, they get arrested, they get released. What's more important, this is the question, okay? So it wouldn't necessarily be illegal under international law, but this is the most important question. What and who made that law and why? Priti Patel prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organization, a Zionist-funded, abhorrent, racist Home Office Secretary prescribes an organization, no consultation, no parliament, no talk, no research, no advice from the security establishment, no recommendation from people who are concerned with the matter, no consultation of the Foreign Affairs Office, and are they really a threat? They'll prescribe them. Why? For political purposes, for the sake of Zionists. Because most British politicians are Zionists. That's why. They're slaves to Zionism. And they don't dare speak up against them. Why? Because it would expose them and their establishment. Now there's some moves with Jeremy Corbyn. You know, this new party might bring in a new, fresh start, right? Things might change slightly. But Labour and Tory, the same garbage. Same garbage, totally. But this is creating a debate. So the people are challenging it. If the organizations are having a challenge with the judicial system, which still has, in Britain, there is a very high level of independence when it comes to the courts. You can argue there might be favoritism here and there. Typically, if you would ask people in the legal world, they will tell you usually there'll be a little bit more on the side of the government against the people, a little bit more on the side of corporation against the people, a little bit more on the side of women, for example, things like that. And again, that's opinions being shared, but the judicial system, they still have a level of independence. However, them having independence without other systems in place to stop this corruption, because it's a really big thing. Well, the media, the politicians, the bribery, people appointing whoever they want. What did the government do after they didn't like a little bit of, from the previous metropolitan chief? They appointed the Zionist one. That's the problem. But the people are sick of it. Shows you how undemocratic the establishment moves are. And that was from Stephen Kelly. Thank you so much, my friend. Let's go to Pine as well. You said, do you think New Zealand will recognize Palestine at the UN now that Australia, UK, and Canada are saying that they will? We will see. Recognize a Palestinian state, great. But listen, there's something more pressing and urgent here. Stop legitimizing Israel. Declare Israel as a pariah, illegal state, boycott sanctions, and take action, whether military action or any type of enforcement, to stop a genocide and provide relief for the Palestinian people. Don't tell me you're sincere if you're doing none of that. Don't tell me you're sincere when you're still to this day condemning the Palestinian resistance. Don't tell me that. And you're legitimizing the IDF, the biggest terror army on earth. Sorry, maybe second. After the United States, come on, they killed millions. We're not going to go back in history for too long. But yeah, but there are more pressing things. Do the pressing things, please. And thank you everyone for participating as well in the chat. Let's see what else we have. Everything gaming. What do you think governments are organizing Palestine so they can get votes in the next election knowing full well it doesn't do anything? Of course there's an element. And the fact that politicians are trying to appease to the people or be more popular by speaking about Palestine is indeed a good thing. But we as observers and as people need to be very wary of their intentions. Give me your track record, please. Give me your resume. Give me your CV. This is how we should view our presidents and prime ministers. Give me your CV. Show me what you've done before. Do you even qualify to lead a country? What is this? People without experience, without merit, without values, without nothing. Come and brainwash the population through media tools and become a dictator for the next 4 years. If you want to talk about Palestine, sure, open the books. Open your books. And we're responsible, by the way. So you're responsible. He and she are responsible in doing that due diligence, because no one's going to give you the truth on a golden plate and feed you with a silver spoon. No one's going to do that for you. You're going to have to put in some effort. All of us have to. So they can try and do that, but it's up to us to decide if they are genuine or not. If you're genuine, show me. Show me what you've done. Give me evidence. What are you doing now? If I'm not pleased with what he's doing now, there's no way on earth I'm gonna give him my vote, right? But undeniably, they're doing that because of the public pressure. And that's why the public pressure is exceptionally important. And it's effective. And it's working. It's working, and it's going to continue the work if it escalates. If it fades away, it will fail. And the Incook, thank you so much for your super. This has been an emotional draining story from day one. And this death cult now. Bless you, Mahmoud, and bless you again, brother. Take care of yourself. Thank you, and bless you, my brother. And it will, hopefully. In the meantime, of course, we will cover everything and continue to expose the lies and present the people with the facts on the ground. And thank you again for that. Let's see if we have anything else before we wrap up. Orangin, what is your opinion on the Trump route for prosperity and peace? The Trump route for prosperity and peace is the Trump route for getting what Trump wants. There, he has no path for prosperity and peace. Donald Trump already did a U-turn and took so many steps back on so many of his campaign promises that his base in the United States is disgusted of him. Many in the United States who are Trump hardliners, apart from, by the way, be careful, there are people, leading figures who are like, considered to be far right or some right, elements who like to constantly talk to you about conspiracies and about how Donald Trump is playing a 5D chess game and that people don't understand it and they still have abhorrent racist tone. Be wary of these people. But the people who were misled by Donald Trump or had some sort of faith in Donald Trump that he will have a change, they're taking a step back. And Trump is worried about that, especially if he would have plans for the future. So far, he's shown there is no America first whatsoever. He's a warmonger. He supports the biggest entity of terror in West Asia, killing children. Therefore, he's a mass murderer. If you support genocide, you are a genocidal terrorist. If you arm Israel, you are Israel. So Donald Trump is a mass murderer. Accept that fact very well. No prosperity, no peace. No prosperity and peace comes from an American president under this recipe. America as an establishment is hijacked. The two main parties are backed by the same people. And the people who vote are primarily brainwashed to think either this way or that way, either blue or red. Well, guess what? Blue and red are the same thing, because they seek the approval and the money of the same people. You want something different? Bring someone totally different outside of the establishment. That's what we were talking about before the elections in the UK and before the elections in the United States. You want to vote anything, you sure as hell don't vote for the same corrupt recipe that you've been voting for all along, moving from blue to red. And same policies, by the way. They'll do a couple of things to appease to the, a couple of populist moves here and there that make no sense whatsoever and can be really harmful and damaging for the people, either financially or socially or mentally or from an education or a healthcare perspective, and sell it to you as, oh, look, we've done that. And some people, oh, look, yeah, they did. But when you start calculating 1 + 1 + 2 + 3, oh my goodness, I was fooled. So there's no prosperity and peace from a militaristic oligarchy. Prosperity and peace is the oppressed and the other weaker groups of people working to improve what they have and bringing an alternative and working on bringing an alternative. And that will never happen if you continue supporting the same failed recipe. Excuse me, but you become really dumb if you do that. But they count on that mass ignorization and manipulation through mainstream media and repeated propaganda, psychological warfare. This is how it operates. This is how they work. And that's why we need to be very, very wary of them. So he's not going to bring any peace. What peace? He could have brought peace a long time ago if he wanted. But peace isn't what they strive for. They strive for what they want, greed. Greed, eternal greed, unbelievable levels of greed. And thank you for that. And I think we have a really, wavy McFly. Do you see how Trump is becoming more dictatorial by putting the military on U.S. streets? He knows this is the end of the empire. I'm scared how rats act once they're concerned, him and Netanyahu. Absolutely. Sending the National Guard to California without the consent of the governor. Undermining him. The authorities literally using physical force against representatives who were brought by the public and voted for by the public. This is elected dictatorship. They didn't even have a scent of democracy. There is no scent of democracy there. You elect a dictator. Democracy isn't just voting and it ended. No. That's not democracy. It never was in its original form. Not to say that there's an original holy form and recipe. No. Every ideology or every policy or way of governing needs to be constantly reviewed, refined, and reformed. But what they've been doing is the opposite, making everything worse and worse and worse. And expanding the power of the already powerful against the majority. Elected dictators. That's what we have. And Piney also said that these countries need to not only recognize Palestine, they need to repeal the recognition of the state of Israel. Absolutely. So if you're not talking along those lines as a country, don't talk. And by the way, one of the most dangerous things, like I said, they are not blaming Israel. To them, Israel is not a culprit. They never said Israel commits war crimes. They never say Israel is, or Netanyahu, the war criminal, or the wanted war criminal, or genocide according to the international law. No, they never say that. And everyone who says that, and everyone who says one negative word about the oppressed side and its heroic resistance, remove any trust from these people. Because they want you to be killed in silence. That's why they constantly target the Palestinian resistance. Anyone who condemned the Palestinian resistance a year and 10 months ago, be careful. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat. Of course, apologies if I didn't reach all of your messages. But I do appreciate your support, and I was glad to have another live stream with you after many days of not having a live stream. In the coming days, we'll, of course, hopefully, I'll do what I can in terms of mixing between videos and live stream, and we'll hopefully have variants for you too. So thanks a lot, everyone. Special thanks to everyone who sent supers in the chat. Thank you so much for your support. The Incog, Pine, Brian, Rune, Khaled, Faint, Insurgency, Maggie, Kime, and Dina. In the meantime, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, night, or day, depending on where you are. Stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.